Guilty. He's found guilty. He was found guilty.
After less than a week in court, Karmelo Anthony begins a 35-year sentence today. A jury found him guilty for the murder of Austin Metcalf at a track meet in Frisco last week for a stabbing at that track meet in Frisco. This was a case talked about all over social media and covered nationally since it began.
It was no surprise. This large crowd behind us, you see, gathered outside the Collin County Courthouse at the end of the trial. Emotions were high after the verdict was read. Chris Sadeghi is live there this morning where things are quiet. With the trial over, family and loved ones on both sides look to move forward.
Well, Kara, the emotion in this case had built for more than a year, and it hit a crescendo both in the courtroom and out here in the parking lot when the verdict was read. Karmelo Anthony, guilty of murder, sentenced to 35 years in prison.
I'm sick. I just feel like there was so much that wasn't taken into consideration. It was so fast.
I think that poor decisions were made, and this is a sad outcome, but justice was served.
As they've been all trial long, supporters of both the Anthony and Metcalf families were in the parking lot when the verdict was read, and that's when things finally boiled over with lots of emotion. However, things did remain peaceful. In closing arguments, prosecutor Bill Werski told the jury, you do not get to meet a shove with a stab, especially when you provoke a shove. It did not take the jury long. They returned the guilty of murder verdict less than 3 hours after closing arguments ended. Our reporter, Jobin Ponecker, was in the courtroom and said Karmelo Anthony could be seen crying at the defense table when he learned his fate. In the punishment phase that followed, Karmelo Anthony's mother took the stand and testified her son is sorry for what happened and asked the jury, have mercy on my son, before the jury deliberated once more and decided on a sentence of 35 years. Anthony was remanded into custody. This is a new mugshot. Afterwards, the Metcalf family did not speak themselves, but Austin's brother Hunter stood next to DA Greg Willis as he made a statement for them.
Their strength and grace throughout this unimaginable journey has been inspiring. They won't be taking questions at this time, but their presence here speaks volumes about their commitment to seeking justice for Austin.
And we did learn there were 2 arrests made here in the parking lot after the verdict, but neither for any kind of assault or violence. One was for public intoxication. The other was on an unlawful weapons warrant. Matt and Kara, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. All right, so after days of testimony, it took jurors only hours to reach a verdict, and before the day was over, a sentence was handed down. A lot to unpack here.
There is. Joining us this morning to help put some of it into context for you, Dallas criminal defense attorney Bree West, who has helped guide us through this case from the very beginning. And Bree, an appeal is expected on this one, so walk us through that.
So, a criminal trial has multiple phases. We obviously experienced, all of us sat here and experienced the verdict, the punishment phase, but a trial's not over after the punishment phase. The next thing that we move into is the appellate phase, right? At the end of most criminal trials, certainly a murder criminal trial where there is a guilty verdict and a substantial sentence. 35 years is a substantial sentence in a murder conviction. There's an appeal process. And so now his lawyers are not going to be talking about relitigating the facts of the case. They're going to say, was the law followed? Were his constitutional rights protected? And that's the next step as they move through the appellate process.
All right, so murder and manslaughter was on the table here for the jury. What do you think was the tipping point for them?
That's a really good question. I think that what we talked about a lot is that that murder is the intentional and knowing killing of another individual, versus manslaughter would include a reckless intention, right? A reckless mental state. In this instance, the only thing that I think jurors could have hung up on, if they hung up on anything, was that they did not believe that anything that Karmelo Anthony did on that track was reckless, and that left them with murder.
Okay. So also something we want to follow up here before you go. We appreciate your time this morning, Bree. What shocked me and so many others, I think, in the legal community was the amount of time spent in the sentencing phase. I mean, this argument started on Thursday. It is over today. And they put Karmelo Anthony's mother on the stand, but we didn't hear from anyone else, and it was over very quick. Can you wrap your head around that?
I think what we have to all accept is that there had to have been countless conversations with Karmelo Anthony, his defense team, his family, and there were decisions that were made about how they were going to manage sentencing. They ultimately decided to put on one witness and not talk a whole lot about how young Karmelo Anthony was and all of those kinds of things. And so You know, the jury didn't have a whole lot to consider. It may not have taken a lot of time to decide he was 17, his mom loves him, this was tragic, and they came up with a sentence.
All right, Dallas criminal defense attorney Bree West, we appreciate your insight. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
All right, we brought you continuous coverage of the verdict and sentencing on our streaming app WFAA+. You can watch that live reaction with our After the Trial special on demand right now.